Welcome to the Life Burst Summer Series. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sarah. On today's show, we are sharing Benji's interview, an interview about faith and science, and are they compatible? It's very good. I did enjoy this one.
This is a fun interview, so make sure you have a listen.
So this is Life Burst, and today we are chatting with Benji. Thanks for coming in onto the show.
Thanks for having me, Sarah and Matt. Or is it Matt and Sarah?
It doesn't matter which way.
Matter.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're all equals here. But it is good to have you in.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. It's so great to be here. And I'm so excited about what you guys are doing here as well for the community as well. Thank you.
It's good. And g'day to our listeners as well.
Hello, listeners.
Watching wherever. Take us back, Benji, to the start of your life. Where did life start out for you?
So, yes, I grew up in Malvern, Uniting Church, or Malvern, and that area, and just a average kind of suburban kind of, it was a good childhood. I went to Glenunga High School, but I grew up in like the 80s, early 90s, and I don't know if you remember that time. It was kind of a scary time. It reminds you a little bit of where we are now if you were a young person growing up. So about 15, I remember, like there was Band-Aid had happened. There was that, do you remember that TV ad about AIDS with the Grim Reaper?
Yeah, a bit scary.
You may be.
I am 27, so I
you
have
can
no
YouTube
idea.
it and look at it there. Okay,
He's still there.
I do know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. So there's a Grim Reaper, and he had a bowling kind of action, and he bowled all these people. This family just went falling apart because everyone was going to die of AIDS, and there was also all pictures of pollution being spread into the atmosphere and that kind of. It was quite in some ways, a fearful environment to grow up in. But as a teenager, I really wanted to be a scientist.
Okay.
That was my big dream. Yeah. So, and I've got a prop for this one.
He's brought lots of props in, so once again, this is
like a younger Einstein, you see. That's my Einstein. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got an
Got that.
Einstein wig on.
Yeah, so E equals MC cubed. That was going to be my big thing.
And did it?
Well,
Was it?
well, there is a story to that. So I
Okay.
did progress. Can I take this off now? Is that all right?
Yeah, you
I
better.
don't know.
So
You can.
you're like, yeah. This is actually what my hair looked like when I was a teenager.
Really?
Yes, yes, it did.
You wanted to look exactly like Einstein.
No, well, not quite. I didn't see the point of cutting my hair and doing hair stuff. Anyway,
What did your mother think of this?
I'm one of those kind of like, if someone told me to cut your hair, I probably wouldn't cut my hair.
Yeah.
Put on your jumper. No, I'm not going to put on my jumper. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Right, how did that go down?
by the time I got to like university, I had hair that looked like this, and all my photos. Thankfully, I couldn't find any to send you guys. It looks pretty much like this, and I was able to get a wife eventually, so it was all right. It worked out for me.
Well, they were dark times, so yes, we'll pay that. So science was a.
So science was a big thing for me. Really loved it. My dad was a scientist, still is. Well, and you never really take the science out of a person. I loved. I thought a Nobel Prize was, that would be a pinnacle of my career. I could do that as a young person, maybe.
So I'm kind of imagining you as like a kid with your dad being a scientist as well, like doing backyard experiments and stuff, or not really?
Well, actually,
Because you got the hair and everything.
So in primary school, in year 6, for some reason, my teacher was a really good leader actually, and got some of the students to help teach the whole class. So I taught science to my classroom. In fact, to my whole assembly at one stage. So back in the day, Curiosity Show. Do you remember Curiosity? Again,
Yes.
I'm too young, but I know.
You know the concept. So Curiosity was a big thing, and I really loved watching that. And I was to do that kind of stuff at school assemblies actually. So
Did it ever go wrong?
Thankfully not. I didn't try any explosions. But,
Okay.
yeah, I do remember one big thing I was teaching about how you could put a table on top of another table and have all these balloons inside, and that a pocket of air could hold up So then I got my whole class to stand on top of the table, and they were still standing on this cushion of air, and it actually worked without the balloons popping. And I never really tested my things beforehand. You're supposed to, but thankfully it all worked out. The Curiosity Show books were really well tested.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So all of that spurred your love. Your dad, he spurred your love for science.
Yep.
Through school.
Through school. So throughout that time, really, I was quite loved the science. And then I got into science. So first year uni at Adelaide Uni to do a science degree, just a basic science degree. That's like a 3-year kind of thing. And then I didn't quite know. So second year was really hard for me because I didn't know what sort of scientist I wanted to become. And second year, if you're ever doing science, maybe you're watching this and you experience this yourself. In second year, you have to specialize a little bit more. So I'd gone fairly broad before that, but then I had to choose my subjects, and most of the subjects I wanted to choose were on top of each other. So I had to really then work out, okay, I'll probably end up being a biochemist, which is what I became. Okay. So a geneticist, which brings me to my next prop. So can I take that one off?
Yeah.
Yes.
Here we go. Here's
okay. Explain to us what you are holding.
So this is a pair of genes, genetics.
Yeah, boom.
But there's something different in them. Like.
Oh yes, yeah. So while I was doing second year uni, so I remember in my it was one of the introductory courses to genetics. I discovered that the world of science actually has holes in it. The world of genetics has
very good.
some holes
Very
in it.
good.
These are my holy genes.
Your genes, the holy genes.
You can see that? That's
very good. Very good. Awesome.
So what I discovered is that they remember the lecturer saying that basically the point of life is to pass on your genes to the next generation. Now you're probably not quite the next, but maybe Sarah might be the next. That's the whole point of life,
youngin,
is to pass your genes on to the next generation.
That makes you feel good, Matt, that you're really old.
Yeah. and basically the whole point of family and love and nurturing, all that kind of stuff, is to make sure your genes are well cared for and looked after so that they can pass on their genes to the next generation.
These are not well cared for. They got holes in them.
That's yeah. So
that was our time. Remember,
that's where the analogy falls apart.
It's okay, but I get it.
Yeah,
That's really good.
Like that was what the point of life was from a genetics point of view, and I realised fairly quickly after that lecture that if I was looking for the answers to some of the really meaningful kind of questions in life, I wouldn't find them in genetics. Because that's fairly empty way to live, isn't it? To think the whole point of life is to pass on your genes to the next generation. That's like, mate, surely there's more to life than having kids and grandkids, and that's it. Is that all we're designed to be, or that all we've evolved to be? And that night actually, I remember going sleeping at night. And before I went to sleep, I opened up a Bible that my grandma had given me, and I went, okay, I'm not going to find the answers to the meaning of life in science, not the way that I thought. Science does a really good job of the how questions, but not so much the why questions.
Okay.
So the how of life, how cells work, and it's, it's beautiful and it's majestic and it's wonderful, but in terms of finding out why we're here and what our purpose is, and why we love and why we have hope and those sorts of things, it's not going to do the job. It's limited. It's like kind of living in a cage. You can see the questions out there, but you can't quite get to them. So that night I remember going, okay, perhaps I'm going to find it in religion or faith or some spirituality or something like that. And what I said about the Grim Reaper and this sort of sense of fear. Had that with me too. So I got this. There was this kind of personal angst that something wasn't quite right. There's more to life, and I didn't quite know what it was, and I wasn't going to get it from science. So I opened up my Bible and said, "Okay, God of the Bible, if you're real, this is your chance. Otherwise, tomorrow I'm going to go to the library and look up the Quran or other things and see what happens."
Now that might be a great spot to pause and take a break and see what happens next. So big questions, big wrestling.
That's a really big statement to make. How old were you? Just quickly.
I was
just before we jump to the break.
19, possibly 20. 19.
That's big. That's
Yeah.
big. Okay, we will be back with more Life Burst straight after this with Matt and Sarah. Welcome back to Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. We're chatting with Benji. So you said to God, just like, show me if you're real. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go to the library and look at the Quran or something else.
Yeah,
instead.
I did. So
What happened?
So what happened is I then put out, and it wasn't quite this Bible, but I put out a Bible that my grandma gave me. And you know those things that sometimes you hear it like, I'm just going to open the Bible and see what happens. And
What happened?
And you get told, don't do that. There's probably better ways to read the Bible and that kind of thing. In fact, I'm a minister now in the United Church, and I sort of say that myself, but occasionally it works. So I open up the Bible, and what do I find? I find someone asking Jesus this question. He says, what is the most important commandment? And I thought that was a really good question. I thought, okay, in terms of religion, what do I know? I've heard Jesus died to save me from my sins. And I thought at the time, I haven't done anything really bad. I've never been, in jail for anything. I haven't murdered anyone particularly. So I don't feel like and if I make a mistake, I just try to learn from it and say sorry and move on. So that message wasn't connecting with me at the time. Mm-hmm. Different story a bit later. But that message wasn't connecting. So here is Jesus being asked this question: what's the most important commandment? I thought he was going to answer, don't do this, don't do that. I thought Christianity was a bunch of rules of don't do's. The 10 Commandments.
Which is what so many people think.
Yeah. So then I was really surprised by his answer. He said, I love God with all your heart and mind and soul and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So love God with everything you got, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So 3 ways of loving. And I thought at the time, that is a really good answer. That's like, I can't find that kind of answer in literature, in poetry, in songs, in science, in other places. But here's this guy Jesus summarizing, like in my mind, summarizing what the whole Christian faith is about. And
when he says neighbor, does that just mean the person that lives next door to you? That's easy, sort of. Maybe.
Yeah.
Depending on who lives next door to you.
And I've heard you've got a great neighbor. So.
No, they watch the show every week.
Yeah. So, hello, neighbor. So it is very easy in some cases. You're right, but when I heard that, and Jesus goes on and talks about it a little bit later. But when I read that at the time, I thought, neighbor. If you've grown up watching Sesame Street, your neighbor is everyone.
Okay.
Everyone on the street is your neighbor.
Yeah.
The whole community. I saw it as love outside yourself.
Okay.
Those who might be friends and those who aren't your friends as well, strangers as well. But to love, loving God, loving others, and loving yourself as the meaning of life and a purpose, I thought that is something I could give my life to try and do that, and that's better than anything else I've found anywhere else in terms of a purpose and mission and guidance for myself. So I went, yep, I'm really excited by that answer, and this is an answer that can't come from just human knowledge. There's something special about this guy, Jesus. But I still didn't believe in God at that stage.
So you went to the library the next day?
No, I flicked on with the Bible.
Oh, okay.
Okay, flicked on a little bit more.
And this is still that same night?
Same night.
Okay.
So I went, okay, well, I don't really know if God exists, so why should I love God? And what is love anyway? These are all these questions from my head.
Good scientific questions.
These are very scientific questions now.
So then I flick on to another section of the Bible, which is 1 John, and there's a chapter heading in one of the letters of 1 John, and it just says 3 words: God is love. And it just clicked for me. You know how when you're listening to beautiful music and your hairs go all tingly and that kind of thing. That kind of moment happened for me when I read those 3 words: God is love. It just clicked, because I didn't know that God exists, but I knew that love exists, and I couldn't explain it scientifically. It's got to be more than just chemical synapses in the brain that are there, that evolved to pass on your genes to the next generation. It's more than just poetry or roses or chocolates or love hearts or anything like that. And I knew that love existed, but I couldn't explain it scientifically. And here is the explanation: that where there's love, that's God. God is love.
So did you, hang on, this is probably before Google, right? So you couldn't research the answers or anything? You literally just opened up
literally like 6 months before.
You just opened up the Bible to another page and that just appeared.
Yes.
Okay.
So
That seems really crazy.
Yeah.
You know that, right?
yeah. So I went, okay, God is love. Love exists. Therefore, God must exist. Therefore, I better find out more about this guy, Jesus, who says to love your neighbor and love you as you love yourself and love God with everything you got. So I started going to church pretty much that weekend.
Wow.
Right. You had no hesitation to walk into a place that you'd never been to.
Well, I had
Never
gone
felt.
as a kid, so on and off.
Okay.
On and off. I didn't in high school because I slept in. I liked my sleep.
As teenagers do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just didn't attend very much. But I decided to go back to the church that had invested in me when I was a kid.
Okay.
With Sunday school. It turns out that there was a new minister that had just started up. Phil Carr and his daughters that were there, and they were about my age too. That we were the only ones there, and soon Jonathan Davies, who's now minister at Seeds Uniting Church, actually came from Tassie as a country kind of guy, and we started a youth group within 3 weeks or so. I started singing at church within 2 weeks of turning up to church.
That's big.
I was pretty.
You've
solidly
gone from
involved.
like being really, really like scientific and really testing of things to now just being like, yep, cool, that's fine. How did you just change so quickly? What happened?
Well, I didn't lose my questioning ability.
Okay.
And to I remember early on listening to that song, Jesus loves me, this I know because the Bible tells me so. You know that song. And I remember thinking, that's a circular argument. Okay, what if you don't believe in the Bible? Does that mean you don't believe that Jesus loves you? And it's just, I remember thinking those sorts of thoughts. So it was very much just like the disciples in many ways, like of followers of Jesus. They take a number of years to get to understand exactly who Jesus is, and it took me a long time to really get to know more. And there's still so much more, which is what I love about the Bible, actually.
So did you go back and continue to study
So
science?
I started,
or were you like,
yep.
no?
So I started reading through the Bible fairly heavily, and understanding that as much as I possibly could, and talking to other people. And as I said, it was before Google, so I couldn't look up these things. And then I was still doing my science degree, so I was about halfway through my science degree, and I still love science, and I still love thinking in a scientific way. I knew that science wasn't going to give me all the answers, and about the purpose of life and those sorts of things, and that's why I sort of started to invest in like youth groups and that kind of stuff, because I wanted to help people understand that there was so much more to life, that the fullness of life is more than just what science can offer, or great music, or relationships, or those sorts of things. Because I talked about that fear before. When I started to understand this love and this concept of love, and God's love for me, and God calling me to love for others, that fear seemed to just melt away. And it's only years afterwards that I look back and go, hey, yeah, it disappeared. The Bible talks about this heavenly peace, and I got this sense of peace on my life, which I hadn't ever had before. This kind of, before it was just a searching and a gnawing and a kind of like an angst about everything that was just in the background all the time. But suddenly I didn't have that anymore. I had a sense of peace and knowing that, even if things aren't all right, things are okay.
People often talk about a hole in their life that they try to fill with other things.
Yeah. I've wondered about that. I kind of initially thought maybe Jesus is Christianity, or my faith, which I was growing into, was more like clothes on a naked body kind of thing, But then as I go on, I don't want Christianity to be like a wristwatch that you can take on and off. So it became yeah, like a whole. But I think it's more the way I like to understand it is like if you're watching this on TV right now, probably watching it in color. Not many people are watching it in black and white. But I see life going from black and white to color in terms of watching TV kind of thing.
That is very good. And we will be back to hear more from Benji straight after this on Life Burst with Sarah and Matt.
You are listening to Life Burst with Matt and Sarah and Benji. And look, now by the looks of you, Benji, despite I have a feeling that this next part of your story tells us that somehow you didn't drop science altogether.
Well, I'm actually wearing these because I've heard that you guys know talk. Wait, no, that's not. No, it's not protection. This is actually, it's not the goggles that I wore when I was a scientist, but it was what I could find in the dress-up box.
Nice.
But they're scientists.
Do you mind if I take them off now because they're kind of hurting my eyes?
You can take them
thanks.
off.
All right. So you didn't really answer that, did you? So yes, I still became a scientist. So having become a Christian, really, I then was still a scientist. I was locked into doing a science degree and then an honours degree, and then I really had to toss up when I was doing my PhD. Well, before I did my PhD, whether I should keep going. So if you want to be a research scientist, then you're basically locking in like 9 years of your life into university, which is kind of what I wanted to be a research scientist. So that's what I knew I was heading into. I did get I entered my PhD, and I did a PhD. I would love to tell you the topic of my PhD.
Yeah, go for it.
Are you into titles of
Is it long?
of thesis? Yeah.
Go.
Do it. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So I was the title of my thesis in the end was, obviously I finished, right? Was the mechanism of transcriptional interference in bacteriophage. No, in the transcriptional switch of bacteriophage 1H6.
Okay. Of
Cool. I
course.
know exactly all about
Yeah.
that. That's great.
Like,
yeah. Well done.
It was kind of on the news. It was. Oh,
What is that?
but I would love to tell you about bacteria, the world of bacteriophage. So this fascinating. This is what our lab was studying. So bacteriophage. Have you heard of them before? Have you heard of a bacteriophage?
No.
A phage. Okay.
A bacteriophage. Yes,
Okay.
Phage.
Is it the same word, bacteriophage?
Or is it
Okay.
different?
It's so
Okay.
I've got now 3 boys, but it was one of the first words that they learned.
Really?
Mum, dad, bacteriophage.
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah.
That's how it went in our family. So bacteriophage, and I asked you to Google this because they're quite cool, science fiction-y kind of things. So they have a hexagonal kind of heads, right? Mm-hmm. And they package up their RNA or DNA inside that in a big coil and a big it's all packaged up there. And then it's got this neck that comes around there and this base plate, and then it's got these spidery legs that come out like that out of it.
Okay.
And that's it roaming around. Okay. And then what it does, so bacteriophage, obviously it's phage means eat, to eat, so it eats bacteria. Okay.
Right.
So it finds a bacteria, which is just like a big fat hairy sausage, mostly. Okay. And they're a lot bigger than this bacteriophage. Finds one, the spidery legs kind of join on, go, yep, that's the right one. And then that base plate drills a hole using some kind of protein explosions and smashes a hole in the cell wall of that bacteria. And then it's like a big syringe that injects its DNA into the middle of that bacteriophage. Don't glaze over, Sarah. Yeah. This is amazing stuff.
I am
Get scared.
intently looking at you
Okay.
right now. It's still be like, wow.
So then this DNA gets replicated like about 200 times, and then it starts to make neck proteins, makes head proteins and legs, and then it packages all together, and there's about 200 of these things inside this big sausage, and then it sends a message that the cell wall of that sausage just break apart, and these go on and infect neighboring ones. Does that? How long do you reckon that would take to do that? Have a guess.
Okay, I'm gonna go quickly. Seconds.
Oh no, sorry, not that quick.
Like a couple
Bit
of
unimpressive
hours.
for you,
Sorry.
and slightly more impressive for you there, Sarah. So 20 minutes. Take 20
Right.
minutes to do this.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
quite amazing.
That's very quick and
Yeah.
amazing.
Okay, it sounds like
Right.
an Avengers movie.
It's yeah. So then these just go on
And
affect others. So
This
I was
happens
studying-
in our bodies.
So it happens
Or-
to bacterial cells. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is a virus that infects bacteria.
Right.
But you will have them in your gut right now.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
So this is happening inside of us right now.
Yeah. So there's
literally.
bacteria that will be just replicating, but then there's bacterial viruses that that infect these bacteria. Why would you study these bacterial viruses? Because their life cycle is like 20 minutes, so it's easy to manipulate, change, do some experiments on these bacterial
that's true.
viruses, and you can find the results really quickly.
Okay.
Whereas if you're like I looked at doing a PhD in a lab that was doing like wheat research, and they've got a life cycle of a year kind of thing, so it takes a lot longer to do those experiments. So these were some of the organisms that were used really early on in the 70s to help us study genetics now. So that's what we were kind of doing in our lab, get the basic concepts of how cells work and use those concepts to apply to cells like in your body and your body too,
Okay.
and those who are watching.
Yeah. So you stuck at it, and you eventually
So I
completed the
loved
PhD.
it. It's quite enjoyed it. But throughout this whole period, if you've ever done science is, someone said to me, is like 85% frustration and 15% elation, or maybe it's 90, whatever stat. It's very frustrating doing research science, because most of the time you're doing experiments and they're not working out, or someone else publishes something before you get to it. It can be really frustrating work. But when it does work, it's you're going to the lab and you're thinking, I'm discovering something about the universe that no one else has discovered ever before or seen before. It actually, so some people took, like your intro, you said science and faith, and there's this kind of conception that they're polar opposites, and I can understand why. There's one does a really good job of the how. I think Christian faith does a really good job of the why. But when I was going to the lab, I felt like it was kind of like my prayer life, my worship life, my meditation, because I was discovering something about God's universe that no one else had seen, and it just wowed me. It was like I stood in awe of the creation, and it was such a privilege to be able to do that. Throughout this, now it took me about 4.5 years to get my PhD done, and throughout this time I met Nicole at a
Right, no. How did you meet
we got a
each other?
graduation
We got
photo.
a graduation photo
Oh
first.
yeah, so okay, that's me graduating.
Yay,
The
well done.
hair's looking much better, I must say.
Yeah, it's not a.
Oh, yeah. I did cut it for that, probably for that.
Oh, your mother would have been so happy.
And I think I've still got that tie. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you meet your now wife?
So we would. Well, I got. I could sing, so I used to sing at church. And being young, being male, being a singer, you're suddenly like, there's not many of you. There was Matt just down the road, but there's not many of you, so you get asked to do a lot of things. So I got asked to be in the band for Kids Camp Out. Some of you may remember Kids Camp Out. And it was back in the days when it was on West Beach Caravan Park, and there was like 3,000 people there, and so I was up on stage singing. A great privilege to be able to do that. And Nicole was one of the other singers in that band, so that's how I met Nicole.
So what did you look at her and?
Actually, yeah, okay, there's a bit of a funny story there.
Okay.
So it was at a practice, right?
Yeah.
We had to. So this is a kids camp thing. And I think the theme song for that year was "God Make Us Strong," and so we can roar like a lion and squawk like a black cockatoo, right? And because you get that theme song as the band, and you're able to make up the actions and the noises that everyone else will follow. Those 3,000 people will follow, and you're doing it for the first time. So we heard that line, so squawk like a black cockatoo, and there's a bit of a break in the music. And Nicole and I both looked at each other and we both went like that, and thought that was a great action to do. So that became the action for the theme song. And we both looked at each other and went, "You thought of that same action?"
You're the one.
Yeah. It was in that moment that
Wow.
I thought, if she can do that kind of stupid thing, and she probably thought the same as me.
It's stupidity at first
That's,
sight.
yeah.
Nice. Back to love again.
Yeah.
Yep. It's
Yes,
good.
it is back to
Back to love. Well,
Yeah.
this is Life Burst. We've got more of Benji's short story still to share. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to Life Burst with Matt and Sarah. We're chatting with Benji. So we know that it was love at first squawk, but did you get married?
Yes, we did.
And
get
did you
that.
have that theme song playing at your wedding?
Oh, yeah.
No, but we did have one song from KCO from
Kids came out, yeah.
In God's Time, I think it was called.
Beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, we did do that. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
special.
And I think we got a photo of the
We got a
wedding.
photo of the wedding.
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's at Malvern Uniting Church there, and various different people as part of my the troop there, next to my friends and family. That's good.
How special.
Yeah.
And so where did life take you from there? You completed a PhD and
Well, I haven't yet. So
Oh,
I
you're
didn't,
still
I didn't
going?
actually. I was still going. That was a bit of so yeah. Nicole's a teacher. She's a German teacher, and both her and I wanted to go overseas. And going to the UK would probably made the most sense, so she could teach there. So she kind of got this position over there overseas, but I still had to finish off my PhD. And I actually, it's when you're getting towards the end, it's always hard to know when to stop, and I had to actually change the flights about 3 or 4 times.
Right.
People today know what it's like to change flights all the time, but back then that wasn't. In fact, we got to the very last moment of the last flight. I couldn't change it again without a whole lot of fees. So I think we were due to leave on a Tuesday. Friday, I still had a whole chapter to go, like my discussion chapter of my thesis to go. Managed to nail it in like 6 hours, get it off to about 4 different people that would read it. They read it, bound it together, was able to print it off, bind it, hand it in. Nicole packed all my bags for me, and then I woke up pretty much after working pretty much 4 straight days, and got to the airport.
wow.
And there were my friends and family there to see us off at about half an hour before we had to go.
There
And
you
that-
go.
that
Well
was
done.
But I got
Down to
it
the
done.
wire.
Yeah, just down the wire.
Boy.
But then I went through quite a challenging, like personally, I love being married, and that was really good.
So you landed in the UK and in Liverpool. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And no, not in Liverpool. This
Okay.
Liverpool eventually. So before it
Okay.
was Doncaster in Yorkshire.
Okay. You're right.
Okay.
Okay, so in Yorkshire, so Nicole got a job there. She was teaching, as I said, but I was working minimum wage actually, as in factory work. So I was getting £4.20 an hour, which doesn't sound like much, and it wasn't very much back then either. And one of my so I would get called up probably at the start of the week and get told where I was going to be working for that week. And one of those jobs, I had it for about two weeks. So we kind of get called in to do little jobs. And I remember one of them was in the Vaseline intensive care hand cream shop or factory, right? And we had a pallet of Vaseline intensive care hand cream, and there was like 6 to a box. We had to rip off the top of the box, take that box, put it on an empty pallet, and repeat. And that's all we did
Yep.
for that whole day for 2 weeks. That was my job. And it was quite blissful in many ways. Having done a PhD, you're like,
Yeah.
intense. Yeah, to just suddenly do something that didn't require any brain knowledge at all. It was good. But for a number of years, I've been wrestling with my calling. Like, what am I supposed to be doing with life? Like, yes, what Jesus says about loving God with all your heart, mind, and soul, loving your neighbor as you love yourself. But how does that actually play out? What can I do that as a scientist, or should I be something else? And so I remember Nicole actually wrote me a book of my life in 3 different parts, my life in 10 years' time. And on one page, it was me as a scientist, studying somewhere overseas with my own lab. Another place, I was a presenter on Play School.
Oh, yeah.
And then another one, I was a minister of a church, giving a sermon. And so it was quite helpful for me to get that, to read through that and think about these 3 options. But I really wrestled with it. If you've ever had a sense of wrestling with, what am I supposed to do with my life? Aside from loving God, loving others, what does that actually mean in terms of vocation? Struggled with that. So in Yorkshire, I thought it was a great time just to really think through that a little bit more. I got the results from my PhD, and I did fairly well. So I was able to get some interviews in science. Ended up going to Liverpool. Here's a Liverpool scarf here. Yeah. So we moved just across the other side of the UK, and Nicole was able to get a teaching job easily there, and I was working in nanotechnology actually there, as a biochemist. But funnily enough, when I was there, we started going to a church which was just across the road from where Paul McCartney. So Liverpool is where the Beatles come from. Paul McCartney used to sing at the church choir just across the road where I was going at Elm Hill Drive Methodist Church. We would drive down Penny Lane to get there. It's quite a cool place to live.
Yeah.
But the minister of that church, who was also the chaplain at the university where I was, Liverpool University, he had a PhD in biochemistry, which was just like me. And so we had lots of chats. The previous guy before him had a PhD in astrophysics, David Wilkinson, and he's now at Durham University. And he became a Methodist minister. The person who was sitting next to me in the lab was someone who did youth group. So I was always involved in youth ministry and those sorts of things, and really enjoyed that kind of aspect of things. So he was this other guy. He kind of dressed exactly like he was an Isle of Man version of me, in many ways. And he never felt the call to ministry, but just to be a scientist who does ministry on the side. But is very much a Christian throughout his whole life. Whereas I'd always thought that basically if he showed some kind of aptitude to ministry and to leadership, that everyone was going to pressure you to become a minister, just because they desperately needed people. So it wasn't anything specific about me. But meeting this other guy, Damien, I realized, well, perhaps there is something more specific. And then talking to the minister at the Methodist church there, who was a biochemist, it was like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So throughout we were there for about 2.5 years or so. Really enjoyed it. Great place to be. Nicole got pregnant, and as soon as we got pregnant, actually, have we got time for a funny story?
Of course, always.
That? Yeah. Okay. So Nicole and I, we were quite surprised at how quickly this pregnancy thing happened, and we weren't really ready to be parents, particularly at that stage. But Nicole had just done the test, and we had choir practice to go to. So she did the test, and it was like, what do we do now with this information? Like, you're pregnant and we're going to have a baby, and so we're like, well, we just have to go to choir practice. Like,
Just have to pretend that nothing exists that happens, right?
Sing it out.
So there we are, and at choir practice, and we're singing the Messiah, and one of the first songs in practice is, "For unto us a child is born, a son is given," and it was a son that we had eventually.
Oh, there you go.
And we both look at each other across the room over singing again. Not squawking this time, but going, wow.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Well, now, before you move on to the next part, we were going to take a break and then hear a little bit of what prompted you to go from there to where you are now. This is Life Bursts. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sarah. Welcome back to Life Bursts with Matt and Sarah. We're chatting with Benji. You're in Liverpool, now you're here in Adelaide, and you've got some type of blue scarf on the table.
Yes.
You switched your Liverpool scarf.
Yeah, switch from that scarf.
Like
I should
this is
do
the
it.
Liverpool
So I went
one.
from like that to eventually took a few years to do, and some of the process to this kind of thing.
Okay.
All right.
What is that?
But I don't wear this that often. So this is a Uniting Church stole.
Stole.
Not a
a
stole.
It's a stole.
Yeah. Right. So that's what a minister of the Uniting Church would wear.
What's the point of a stole?
You ask big questions.
There. I should know that. So it's, Matthew, can you help me?
Well, at very least, it identifies you as a leader, as a priest-like figure in the church. So,
Thank you, Matthew. That's
Okay, so it
that's a
just
good
helps
answer.
people to recognize that you're a minister.
so how did you? I mean, that was one of the options that was laid out for you in this in the
true.
book.
Yes,
that
it
your wife
was,
gave
actually,
us.
yes.
So,
Yeah.
obviously,
Could've
the
been a
play
play
school
school.
auditions. How did they go?
I did actually have.
You didn't
not
have a-
play
You
school,
did?
but I went for an audition for a kids program in the UK in the back of a taxi cab, like one of those black taxi cabs. They had a
Yeah.
camera in the front, and then we were supposed to explain like something of interest. So I think it must have been like around the time where they got that young guy that talks about physics and astrophysics and that kind of stuff. That he may have come out of this program, I'm not sure. But I talked about bacteriophage. I told that kind of story that you just heard there. It might work for your audiences. It didn't work for them. I'm sorry. But I never got a call back.
Okay.
I did try a couple of times. I did try this other dancing kind of. I can't dance, but I could sing. I did like a Negro spiritual. I didn't really work for kids songs, and my voice wasn't high enough for wiggles or.
So
that
it
stuff,
closed the
so
book on that possibility.
That's, yes, I did try to open it, but
You
it
did,
just
yes.
wasn't
Not put
ever
like a
gonna
trying.
open. Yeah.
Okay. But you found yourself, back in Australia. How did
Yeah,
that?
so we wanted to go back to Australia because Nicole was pregnant, and the grandparents were here, and great grandparents and that kind of thing. So we left Liverpool, as much as we really loved it, and then I made that big jump to actually pursue a career in the church, in ministry. So I actually called you. I don't know if you remember this, man.
That's true. Yes.
So before I left Liverpool, I phoned up this college in Adelaide, and they said, "Oh, you need to talk to the person who talks to young people," which was Matt.
Yeah.
And I asked you about what it takes to become a United Church minister and youth ministry and all those sorts of things, and you gave me some helpful information, and I booked the tickets, and we came back.
Must have been helpful.
It
Must
was.
have been
It was.
helpful.
All your fault. That's what I'm
Or at
taking
least
out of
I've
this.
handled it to the right person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're back in Australia, and what did it look like for you, just briefly, to move from there to there?
So straight away, I went from working in a lab environment to youth ministry. So I was so this is my youth ministry prop. Okay.
Yeah.
So
We've got
I
a.
remember sometimes wearing this for. I don't.
Is that a
remember what
onesie?
for.
You're wearing
It's
a Scooby-Doo onesie.
I think it came out before onesies came out.
Oh,
but,
okay. So it's
this was
not.
the precursor to
Okay, so it's the
a
Scooby-Doo
onesie.
costume.
Scooby-Doo costume
Yeah.
/ onesie.
Because we moved out of those dark youthful days, and now
Yeah. Now we get to wear these.
we
sorts
had
of
to
things
bring some
instead.
light. And, yeah.
So yes, I did. I won't leave that up there. It's okay.
Okay.
So I went from working in a lab environment to now youth ministry. In some ways, I found it quite strange. So you're in a big building in Melbourne Uniting Church. You're there to interact with people and to work with people. And I found I had more people to interact with in a lab, like a lab that's 100 people in a really kind of small, enclosed space. And there's on this large building, and there's there's about 6 people there, and every phone call that you make, everyone's at school, so you're just talking to answering machines all the time. So apart from these intense times on Sundays or youth group times or these other times where you've got people there, so I found that kind of a strange environment. But eventually, I grew into it and have loved it ever since. So I became from a youth pastor, minister of the Uniting Church. That's kind of a long process. I was called to be a minister at Port Lincoln Uniting Church. Great church there, Unity Hill. We loved being in Port Lincoln, and that's where we sort of increased our family, passed on our genes to the next generation.
Yes.
But in a more meaningful way. and there's probably a photo of our family there. We've got 3 boys now. One of them was born in Port Lincoln. You were a minister just near there,
Neighbouring
Cummins.
town, yeah.
Neighbouring town. And then after about 8 years there, which we loved, we then got called to Burnside City Uniting Church, which is just down the road here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, what a journey! A journey, and it does mean though that you are now Reverend Doctor, doesn't it? You've got
Yes, through all that, I had a few name changes
Yeah.
or additions. Yes, a Reverend Doctor.
so which does sound pretty impressive.
I kind of only use it if I'm writing maybe something for a young person. That, you know, they need someone impressive to,
Yes, it does
to
sound good.
write something impressive for them.
And just quickly, really short answer, but have you found that in your role you're able to live out those commandments, those things that you thought, this gives me purpose to love God,
definitely.
to love others?
Yeah, definitely. Like I remember there was a moment in Liverpool when I was working, I was helping out with the youth group, and I had a great conversation with someone at youth group about life, meaning life, and all those sorts of things. I'm able to share a bit of that story. And that was about the same day that I really got a good publication for my PhD from my science stuff. And I was on top of the game for the science. But I got more excited about these one-on-one conversations about what the meaning of life is. And that was enough for me to go, okay, I think I know where I need to head.
So in the final 2 minutes of our show, if you had one piece of advice to share with our listeners, what would that be today, Benji?
Well, it would be to live life. Now, I'm going to look straight down there. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you look
To live
straight down.
life to the full. That life is so much more than passing on your genes to the next generation, than what you read on gift cards and those sorts of things. And that there's so much more to life. Live life not in black and white, but in colour. Live life to the full.
Beautiful.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Benji, for coming in on the show today.
Oh, it's been so great. Thank you for having me here and for letting me share my story.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing in some.
All those people that stayed to the end and listened, you know, that's pretty cool.
It's good. Always good to hear a story. But thanks for sharing yours.
you.
This is Life Bursts, and you can catch up with us wherever your podcasts are distributed. You can YouTube, Facebook. You know, Sarah knows where you can
Please
find
stop.
us.
Please.
But
You can catch up with us wherever you get your podcasts from Facebook and YouTube, and of course on community television and radio as well. This has been Life Bursts. I'm Sarah.
and I'm still Matt. Thank you so much for joining us.
Life Bursts is hosted by Matthew Karat and Sarah Freeman, with production by Reese Jarrett and Kay Hoshro Ozadigan. For more episodes of Life Bursts, go to rawcut.com.au. This is a RawCut production.